Welcome back
Boys!
to the
Been a
Eighth
minute.
Round Pick podcast.
It has. It's been a
We-
hot minute.
It has been a hot minute. We took a week off. A lot of things happened. We're busy people. The NFL kicks off tonight. If it comes out on Thursday, I hope you enjoyed the game. If it comes out on Friday, who won? Drop it in the comments. What are your predictions? Are the Rams going to win back-to-back Super Bowls? We'll see. But this past Saturday, we had the first
One
week
second.
of college football. Oh,
It's plug time. Follow
Oh.
us on Instagram. Follow us
Yo.
on TikTok.
yo,
Like and subscribe.
yo.
All of that.
True.
All three.
Return.
Four?
Check
All
us out on Reddit r/the 8th round page.
We're on
four.
Reddit.
Yeah, we have a subreddit,
No,
guys.
no,
We
we're
promise.
not on Reddit.
We promise.
We're not on Reddit. But make it.
Yeah. Fan
Anyway.
fiction, maybe?
No, Batman. Anyways, we had
Made a
the
joke,
first we had the first week of college football this last
Mhm.
Saturday. We had a lot of barn burners, a lot of good games. We saw a couple dominant wins, and one of the most exciting college football games I've ever watched, which was UNC versus Appalachian State.
Oh my gosh.
Bro,
yeah.
that
Truly-
game was nuts.
Truly one of the most exciting games I've ever watched. What was y'all's experience with that?
There were like 500 yards in the fourth quarter.
Mhm.
Right.
And Appalachian State scored more points than they did the entire rest of the game. And then like the failed 2-point conversion.
Yeah,
I
Chase
think it's-
Bryce. Yeah.
That's what it came down to. But oh my gosh, what a game. And it was in Appalachian State. I can't imagine how hyped that
Yeah.
student section must have been. But definitely a huge morale boost for a school that's known for being a spoiler. Like teams sort of put them on expecting nothing and they beat them, like the Michigan game that everyone goes back to.
And South Carolina a couple years ago.
Right. So honestly, I should have expected it, but it was
Right.
like both teams put up like 60 points.
Mhm.
It's crazy. And I don't know who leaving it looks better. I almost feel like Appalachian State leaves looking like the better team. But that's just me. What do you think, Trip?
Well, first off, what happened to that Gene Chizik defense? I remember just all this hype about how he like maybe he might not be the best head coach, but he's got that defensive mind.
Yeah.
That got thrown out the window. What did he give up, like 63 points or something?
Mhm.
And another thing that's interesting is we see these ACC teams take on a non-Power 5 team, and they go to their house, which I find same thing with NC State, right? They almost lose to East Carolina, and North Carolina scrapes out with the win over App State. Brennan, I know.
That poor
Yeah.
kicker. I feel
Yeah.
so
I
bad. He
know.
missed
Oh
the
my
extra
God.
point and the game-winning kick. I feel so bad for him. But
It wasn't even close either, man. It was a
Yeah.
terrible
It wasn't.
kick.
it was
But
so bad. And I feel bad about it.
The thing is why does the ACC schedule these games? Because East Carolina circled NC State. They're like, that's our Super Bowl. They want to come into our
Yeah.
house. We're going to beat them, right? It's not the best environment to play in for NC State. That all those fans, they want to be a top 15 ranked Power 5 team, and same with North Carolina, in-state rivalry. So the ACC just kind of baffles me with scheduling that, because that's the definition of a trap game, I feel. But
Yeah.
the App State and UNC, that was nuts. Drake May and Chase Bryce both looked amazing, especially Drake May, the freshman. Brennan,
There was another side of the coin last weekend, though, in the form of the Chick-fil-A kickoff game against Georgia, Oregon. All of us down south were here watching that game as Oregon and Bo Nix just got hosed for
Bo
4 straight
Picks.
quarters. Bo picks. But I think Oregon may have been a little demoralized, but oh my gosh. Like, this is probably the best game of Stetson Bennett's career that we watched. And I mean, there were some plays that against other teams, it may have been interceptions. And I acknowledge that. But at the same time, like I got his stats up right now, 370 yards, 80.6% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns. He only missed 6 of his passes. But I thought when he left the game, Carson Beck coming in and just immediately jumping in and having such a great drive, um, it was really encouraging to see from Georgia. And the run game was nothing special, but it was pretty
Right.
well spread out, and everyone was averaging pretty well. And it was a
Dejan
similar
Edwards
story.
looked good.
Yeah, it was a similar
It's-
story for the receiving side of the ball. Look at the stats; it wasn't quite what I thought it was, but I thought Lad McConkey played out of his mind.
Bowers, Mitchell caught a
Bowers.
touchdown.
And who's the Washington kid? There was this massive tight end that
Oh,
hurdled someone in the first
yeah,
Big
quarter.
O. Yeah, Big O. He is 6'7", 240, tight end. We have the best tight end room in the country.
Definitely.
We have, of course, Brock Bowers, and then Big O, and then we have Arik Gilbert, the transfer out of LSU, who did not play last year due to personal reasons.
did he
And then
play
we
at all
have
yesterday or on
Arik-
Saturday?
Arik Gilbert, yeah, he got a
Yeah.
couple snaps that game. And then we have number 4, Oscar Delp, who was the number 3 tight end in last year's recruiting class. So,
And all of these tight ends, had they been anywhere else, probably wouldn't have started, honestly. So it's kind of cool to see them out there and see what they can do. But that was just a crazy game from Georgia. And to me, immediately establishes them as championship contenders again. I know it's early, but how could you watch that game and not be like, leave it and feel like there are a lot of teams better than them in the country? Because they came into this game like rated third, right?
Yeah, and now they're second.
And I think that that's justified.
Yeah.
They were playing out of their mind. But yeah.
I think when you look at this game, there are like so many questions you have to answer. Obviously, Georgia looked good, but when you look at that Oregon team, is it a question of, is Georgia really just that good and they're elite and Oregon's not, but Oregon's still a good team? Or is it Oregon is not the 11th best team in the nation? Or is and you got to think of the supporting cast and like of all the
Yeah.
people that played well, like Malachi Starks.
Yes,
It's
he
just
played very well. In
there's
his
so
role.
many questions, and I think the big one is Stetson Bennett now? Does he deserve the disrespect?
Of course not.
Okay. When I think about Stetson Bennett and I watch that game, like it was so individually great on the stat sheet. It just felt like his weapons did so much. It felt like he was throwing them the balls like 7 yards and they turn into 30-yard plays. I wasn't overly, honestly impressed with Stetson Bennett, despite his crazy performance, because it just looks so much like his
Wow.
weapons. But I will say that play in the red zone where he was evasive, and he throws the touchdown. He shakes off like 3 defenders. He puts the move on him. But I just feel like throwing up a pass like that against, like, say, in Alabama, I just feel like that's intercepted or it's a sack. I fear for it. And I
Yeah.
fear for the fact that Carson Beck jumped into that game and looked just as good. For how good that means Stetson Bennett truly is. But I'm looking at the numbers right now. Stetson played out of his mind. Like, I feel like it'd be insane to call him overrated after the performance he just put on, but I'm just going to say I have my doubts for now about his deep pass ability and how much of it is him and not weapons.
Well, the thing is he's not going to get tested until the SEC championship. I feel like Georgia fans we're going to kind of sleepwalk. Whoa, you see, no from Brennan. Who are we going to
Not
get
true.
tested by?
Tennessee is going to be a very big challenge. I think they're gonna
from
come. They're gonna come into Athens as a top 10 team, and they're gonna shock some people this year. And I mean, look how good Florida looked. They looked like
yep.
a truly re-energized team who believes in their coach, bought into the culture, and put in the work this summer. They look like a completely different team.
And
Right.
I have to say something. I was wrong for saying Spencer Rattler had a chance of being the first overall pick. If you watch that Georgia State game, he threw 2 interceptions. I'm sorry for saying that out loud.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Georgia immediately definitely a top 2 team. And the only team I see debate for if they played better last week was Alabama, who I was scared about this being a trap game for Alabama coming in. Utah State last year, 10-3, beat Oregon in their bowl game, were considered for joining the Pac-12. No slouch, 55-0. And Bryce Young again didn't throw too much deep pass the same way I was talking about Stetson Bennett. But the play design Alabama was doing, like Utah State just wasn't ready for it. And the run game, Jahmyr Gibbs, the transfer from Georgia Tech, is as advertised. He only got to run the ball 9 times, but on that turned it into 93 yards, you know. And Bryce Young, it was kind of a fluke game in terms of rushing, but I just have to bring up the fact that he had 5 attempts for 100 yards because he had that one that he broke out like crazy. So, I mean, and Alabama's ball distribution was very good. But, I mean, that's the only team right now that proved, as of week 1, they could play against Georgia. And I kind of want to hear you guys' thought if you watched the Alabama game. Like, do you think Alabama looked more impressive than Georgia?
Well, I kind of want to go first because I want to lead this into a question.
Okay.
I think you kind of have to take these games with a grain of salt because the difference of talent between Alabama and Utah State is so incredibly massive that I feel like no matter what, Alabama was going to look good. Obviously, there's certain things that you want to look for that they probably did well. But I feel with the Georgia game, they played a more talented team and just overall a better team. And this leads me to the question. Both offenses and defenses looked really good, right? And Stetson Bennett, while Patterson, you're not believing in the hype, looked good. He's evasive. He can make the throws, but is he the guy to step up and win you the game like Bryce Young can be with that amount of talent? Yeah. And the question is, who should be the number 1 team?
Okay,
so,
in response to your can Stetson Bennett step up? That is such a dumb question. Did you?
I feel like
him
it's not.
Did you?
I'm with Tripp.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Think about this. Okay. Stetson Bennett. He had the whole 4th quarter of the national championship. He was good, right? Well, that one drive with the throw to A.D. Mitchell, he was good. The rest of the game, he was average. And when you look at games where the team that he played was better, he struggles. 2020 Alabama, what'd he throw? 3 picks? Florida game, gets benched, although his shoulder was hurting. And SEC championship game. And he came back in the Natty and maybe looked a little better. But even as a deep Georgia fan, I think you could watch that game and just see that there is a levels difference in Bryce Young and Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, I think it's a very clear gap between like what is potentially, as of last year, the best quarterback in the country and what Stetson Bennett was. And I'm going to clarify and say I don't think Stetson Bennett's a bad player, but I think it's late in the 4th quarter. and one of the two teams is down by 6, and they need to drive and get the touchdown. Which team I'm putting my money on?
Right.
And I
And
think both have the ability to. I've seen
right.
Stetson Bennett put on a clinic and do like 90-yard drives before the half. I think he did that against Tennessee last year. But I need to see it against the Alabama defense.
Right.
And we saw Bryce Young because we had the pleasure of seeing Alabama and Georgia play 3 times. And Bryce Young, I don't want to say this in a way that takes away from what Georgia did. They won a national championship. When Bryce Young had all his weapons, they beat Georgia twice in a row.
Right.
I do think that Bryce Young
What?
with weapons is more dangerous than Stetson with weapons, but I think they're both respectable quarterbacks. I just need to see just a level up from Stetson. I see, like, if I look at him right now, I hate to use this analogy, but if we're like Madden ratings, I see Stetson more like an 80, 82. And if he were that 86, I would look at him much higher. But look at Bryce Young as like a 95, 96, and I feel like there's a gap. But
Brendan, I'm going to say a statement. Tell me if you agree with it, okay?
Okay.
Do you think that Stetson Bennett, while he is great at extending plays and he can get the ball to playmakers, any above average quarterback could do that?
I think it depends because you could sit here and say that someone like a Derek Carr is an above average quarterback, but do you think he can extend plays like Stetson Bennett does? I don't. But, maybe.
Yeah, but I feel like Derek Carr as a passer is more of the just get it to your playmakers type guy.
Derek Carr gets the ball out fast, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
I mean, we can sit here and argue all day. What it comes back to with me is this guy was a walk-on. Everybody said he was going to be no good. He showed up in 2020. He wasn't that good. He comes out in 2021. He's a little bit shaky. And and then he really starts picking it up.
Well, he was JUCO in 2021, I thought.
No, in 2019.
Patterson.
That was last year. That was last year, 2019.
Yeah.
He started in 2020. That was when we had the DeJuan Mathis situation, and he ended up being trash. Stetson came in, and he performed okay. And then we had the JT Daniels savior at the end of the season.
Side tangent. So How is DeJuan Mathis doing right now? That's simple.
Not good. What it comes back to with me, I think it is absolutely outrageous to say that Stetson Bennett is not a clutch quarterback. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like, I do agree there's an obvious gap in talent, and if I had to put my money on someone, I would put it on Bama. However, I think it is closer than what you guys are thinking. Stetson Bennett has a moxie and maybe a cockiness and an arrogance about him that makes him makes him win games. He wants it more than everybody else, and we saw him, whether it was a fumble or it wasn't, it was ruled a fumble and he lost it. And
it wasn't.
He faced adversity. Okay, he faced adversity. He took it head on and he won the game. And he did one of the greatest college football drives I have ever had the privilege to watch with my own eyes. It was truly incredible. And that pass to 80 was elite. Okay, and we saw it again at Oregon. That pass to 80 Mitchell over the top of the Oregon corner's head. I mean, beautiful. Put it right where it needed to be. And I don't think he has the strongest arm of all time, but I mean, who really? I mean, we don't really need it in the college football game. And Patterson, you talked about how Alabama had all these really cool schemes and stuff that Utah State wasn't ready for. I think that exact same thing happened with Georgia. We did the swing running back pass. I think McIntosh ended the game with over 100 receiving yards. And then, we had the Ladd McConkey jet sweep and then the fake jet sweep later that game. Just a bunch of really cool plays. I mean, Todd Monken, he's putting on a show. I had my doubts in that 2020 season, but so far he truly has looked incredible.
Okay.
One takeaway I have from looking at this game is people say it's actually a bit of a meme or a bit on the new SEC shorts, where it's the Oregon the pregame speech, and they're saying like Georgia lost 13, 14 starters of the draft year. Can they really replace all of that? And future Oregon goes, yes, they can. And I think while it was impressive, Oregon is no longer ranked, first of all, which I think is a bit extreme. I still think they're top 25, but take that as you will.
They got to play like it if they want to be it.
Yeah, I was very impressed with Malachi Starks. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
I was very impressed by Pop. He played very well. We saw some good snaps out of people like Nazir Stackhouse, who kind of had that late game play last year, who came out and played good. I like the look of Mykel Williams out there, number 13 on the D-line. Jalen Carter was a beast. But I have my concerns with the inside linebackers. Okay. I watched the whole game again recently, and Smile Munden is great. He has the athletic talent. He has that pure athletic speed, but it's a very, very glaring transition from the Kobe Dean, who should have been a first-round draft pick, to
it was a torn pec.
Yeah,
he would have.
To a sophomore linebacker who has never played meaningful snaps in an SEC game before, or a big game. I guess it was technically.
It's just growing pains. We'll see.
It's growing pains, because what my dad said to me is where Kobe would know the play before the offensive line snapped it, and could get there. And if he couldn't read the play, his speed, he was just so freaking fast that he can get there in time to make the
right.
play. Whereas Smile Munden, he isn't at that point yet where he can just know the play right off bat. And
that's
where
a seasoned linebacker.
Yeah, Dad was talking about it too, where they didn't have to call quarterback spies last year because Nakobe Dean was just so fast he could just get there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Whereas they had to actually call spies, and it's just a lot of young players on that line, and we rotate so many. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see who wins that battle between Tresman Marshall and Smile Munden for that inside linebacker spot. But our corners looked good. They started Bullard at the star or slot corner position over William Poole, which I thought was really interesting and is a huge testament to his work over the summer.
Yeah, but I feel like Poole, obviously he was a bit better than Natty, but even in that playoff game, I feel he was a bit of a liability. Obviously he was terrible in the SEC championship. I mean, when you put him against an elite slot receiver, he was getting cooked the whole game. And I think the big thing with Smile Munden and a guy as talented as him, we've seen people say, oh, Georgia's defense is so young. This player is so young. Are they going to be a liability? And I remember, you can look in the past with last year in Keely Ringo, who was going to be a starter for the first year. People were questioning him after the first game. What did he end up doing? Winning them the Natty, right? Same with, do y'all remember DJ Daniel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Young player, big
awful.
Questions about him. He was the definition of solid, in my opinion. So with a guy that talented, I think all it takes is can he adapt to that culture of learning that Georgia defense and just being an elite football player, and I think he can.
Yeah, we'll just have to see how it goes. But I'm excited to watch Georgia football develop and just see where those guys go. See who really emerges as stars when there's so many good players. By the way, this is a side tangent. Did check up on DeJuan Mathis. He is awful. But
yeah. Anybody who watched that Arkansas game knows it was
Yeah, it was
It
bad.
was pretty painful.
Speaking of another Chick-fil-A kickoff game, how
Mhm.
about we transition to maybe the one of the wildest college football games I think any of us have ever seen? Florida State and LSU. That was interesting,
That was
to say
crazy.
the least.
The 99-yard drive to then miss the extra point or get blocked, right?
It was
It got blocked.
yeah. It
Blocked,
was
yeah.
blocked.
Crazy. It couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. In terms of head coaches, I wanted LSU to fail in that game, and I wanted them to fail in that way. So I'm very happy to see that they did. I won't talk about it here, but yeah, that was wild. And honestly, to me, it showed me Florida State is so much better than I thought they were this year. Because as much as LSU is not what they were, LSU is a very proud member of the Southeastern Conference. That they make bowl games and they make runs and they're always dark horses. So for Florida State to come out there and just beat them, like, you got to consider them more for ACC contention, with Clemson just not being as good as we thought they were from the Georgia Tech game. And then we have Miami, who was looking very good, and obviously they and Florida State will have to battle. But I mean, Florida State was impressive, right? We can all agree on that for the most part. They had some things they need to work out, but
I think this is a huge win. They went from a franchise, a dominant franchise, to extremely underwhelming and truly just horrific. For a little bit of stretch here, but I really like what their new head coach is building there.
yeah.
I think especially that one transfer I saw. I can't think of his name now.
The
But he went,
quarterback?
no, the defensive lineman, the transfer.
Oh, the Velos. Oh, whatever
Yeah,
his name. Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
that's
I know
what
who you're talking about.
Yeah, he showed out. I want to say he had like 2, maybe 3 sacks. That was really impressive. I think that this is a huge win for a program that is trying to undergo a culture change, and is trying to push that next step and challenge, the Clemsons, the Miamis, maybe even the NC States of the world for this ACC
Maybe
title.
even.
Yeah, well, I mean, don't count out Devin Leary, man. That's all I'm saying. That man is a baller. That man is a baller. I've been saying that.
I'm gonna spare talking about him for your sake.
All right.
But Jordan Travis in that game, the quarterback for FSU, so much better than I thought he was.
Yeah. For sure.
Let me see, because you were talking about a guy on the defensive side of the ball. I gotta find him because I gotta put some respect on his name.
Yeah.
The fact that I don't know it is probably not good of me.
Not entirely sure where Trip went to our loyal watchers, but
I was gonna try my best to not acknowledge it. Actually,
I'm sure he'll pop up sooner or later.
Yeah, Jared Verse. That's who we're talking about.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. But he was impressive. He had 3 sacks that game.
Mm-hmm.
That's some serious pressure, and that'll play anywhere else. If it played against LSU, it'll play other places. And obviously, like Florida State makes good edge rushers. But
Brian Burns.
I mean, I'm excited. I want to see what he does, and I'm gonna follow him closely.
One more thing to point out, is that this was basically an away game for FSU.
Yeah.
I mean, this was in the Superdome, so
yeah,
that's
right in the heart of LSU there.
Yeah, which my dad. I was like, bro, how can this be allowed? My dad pointed out that we play this year we're gonna play like 3 games in Atlanta. Georgia is, and it's basically the same thing. But whatever. I think LSU fans are a little bit crazier than we are, but that's just me.
Georgia fans get kind of crazy. They
like their gumbo down there. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers. Anyway, on that note, another maybe not a barn burner, but another good game with two teams that are up there in the playoffs for the playoff race this year. Notre Dame and Ohio State. I thought that this game either speaks to how good Notre Dame is or how bad, or not bad, but how much worse Ohio State could be than we thought.
Yeah. Ohio State looked a little scary
Yeah.
going in there with the number 2 seed.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's the first week. You have some bells and whistles to work out when you play a proud team. But Notre Dame is going through a crazy new culture change.
Mm-hmm.
They've had the same coach for so long that to come in and have a new guy, like, you expected there to be growing pains, but they put a fight with the Buckeyes.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, now Coach Day's been there for a few years. He has his culture and his people set in place. So C.J. Stroud, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. There's players who we knew about going into this game expecting to ball, and it was a little less impressive. It was a little bit underwhelming, but not too much of a cause for alarm. I just think Alabama and Georgia played better.
Yeah. It's honestly about time that they got knocked down. I thought it was, especially after this Saturday, it's honestly hilarious that the AP poll even put them ahead of Georgia.
Yeah.
And speaking to that rankings and talking about those top 4 teams,
But Brennan,
what?
you're forgetting one game.
What? Oh yeah.
The first game in big time D1 football.
Yo.
James Madison Dukes absolutely ran through Middle Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
Todd Santero, 6 touchdowns along with 100 yards on the ground. It doesn't apply to anything we've been talking about, and it was a tiny game, but they moved up and they blew out their first game, and I just felt like it was worth mentioning. So, go Dukes. Anyways,
all right,
the college football rankings.
College football expansion, specifically, we got news that by the 2026 season, there will be a 12-team playoff with the top 4 teams getting a bye and the other 4 teams other 4 college football playoff games being played at college stadiums on campus. I think this is huge. It's going to be an amazing atmosphere.
Yeah.
However, what do you think about this whole 12 teams thing? I know, me personally, I would have rather liked to see an 8-team.
Yeah.
I think, 12, we get some teams like, maybe like a is it 2019 or 2018 Notre Dame that I don't that got blown out by T-Law and Clemson. Like, I don't think that team was top 4, maybe not even top 6. Like, I mean, that was embarrassing.
The thing that arises is people are already complaining like, oh, we have all these SEC teams in the playoffs. You understand last year, like, who was in that realm was like Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, Kentucky was up there. It's like we're going to end up for the playoff once again where there's the potential for like there to be 4 teams from the same conference. And I know they're talking about like now there's 6 good conferences. I don't believe it. It doesn't matter how many times you tell me that the West Virginia and Texas Tech game is just as good as Arkansas LSU. I won't believe it. It doesn't matter how many times you tell me that. And there's always going to be that prestige that comes with that. And then it's so many games that you start to wonder, like, at what point, if you're a player that has ambitions of going to play in the NFL, do you play in the playoffs as the 12 seed? Because, like, of course, you have the chance to win for the national championship, but then you have potentially 3 extra games you have to play where people are specifically targeting you. They want to end your season right there so that they can win this game and go to the national championship. Like, that's a scary prospect, and I feel for some athletes that are going to have to make that decision. But in terms of being a fan, it'll be interesting. There's just going to be fraud teams that I'm not excited to see make the playoffs, and then they're all going to be like, well, we made the playoffs this one year,
So I'm reading the fine print here. The four highest ranked conference champions, very important, conference champions, will be seeded.
Conference champions.
So the four highest ranked conference champions will be seeded 1 through 4, with each receiving a first round bye. Teams seeded 5 through 12 will play each other in the first round on either the second or third weekend of December.
Can I add a comment
Quarterfinals.
there?
Yeah.
So I think it was 2018. Alabama didn't win the SEC, but got the
Mm-hmm.
playoff bid over Ohio State. That'll no longer be the
Mm-hmm.
case. So Ohio
Yep.
State gets the 4 seed. Alabama gets the 5. They got to play their way in. Do you think that's
Yep.
better?
Do I
You
think
like that
that's
better?
better? I mean, for a team like Alabama, we saw them win the national championship, so they belonged. They
Right.
belonged.
We know they belonged now,
Yeah.
but like at the time it was controversial.
I mean, I think it's certainly interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
it always comes to like what we're talking about. If it's like an Alabama or a Georgia that didn't win the SEC championship, I think I take them over like I don't know a West Virginia Big 12 champion
Definitely.
every day of the week as one of the four best teams.
No
Um,
disrespect, JT Daniels, but still
yeah,
a
I
little bit
mean
of
he didn't.
disrespect.
They did lose in the backyard brawl. Was it a catch? We don't know. Anyway,
The missed
um,
kicks is what did it.
yeah.
Whatever.
But I think it's certainly interesting. I think maybe it helps them like prove that they belong there. But I mean, for a
Yeah.
team like Alabama or Georgia, if they're seeded against like a lower ranked team, it's just gonna be like a cupcake. It's just gonna be like a cakewalk.
Yeah.
Um, so, we'll see. I think it's certainly interesting. I think it's very cool that they're having the lower games at college football stadiums. I think that's very cool. Good
Yeah.
for the atmosphere. And it also,
Yeah, it's a money
um
thing.
yeah. But I mean, they can pretend like it's for the culture and that is cool. Speaking of money, if we're done with the CFP expansion
I think
talk,
we're good. Yes.
we got a couple new contracts in both the NFL and college football. We saw Clemson's head coach Dabo Sweeney get a
Double down on them.
massive,
Yep.
massive, massive contract. That is now the biggest in college football, even bigger than Kirby's. A
Bigger
ten
than
million,
Kirby's.
a $10,115 contract,
Wow.
which is outrageous. Not outrageous, but I think considering last year, it
hmm
it, it might be a little bit outrageous. But I think overall he's a great coach. They had a down year. It's hard to go from uh consensus number one overall pick generational quarterback
Right.
um to a guy who came in, didn't
He
really
was young.
play. Yeah, he was young. Not everybody can be Trevor Lawrence. It's hard to be a student and an athlete and pick up a whole entire playbook um in one off season. It happens. It happens. And, they lost some major talent on the offensive line as well. While they weren't highly touted prospects in the draft, they're still seasoned veterans and seasoned starters. And, you can see
For
that
sure.
lack of experience. But I think for the most part, it's well deserved. Do I think he should be making more money than Kirby? Probably not. But, I don't know. He has won 2 national championships. Kirby's only got 1, so there's
Yeah. It
that.
was just the situation of he had all the leverage
Yeah, yeah,
because if you really think about it, what was like Clemson had some good stretches,
mm-hmm.
like with CJ Spiller. I acknowledge that, but before Dabo, Clemson was nowhere near what they are now.
Yeah,
So I feel like he was sort of like, if you want a chance to win, I'm the guy. I've
yeah,
proved I'm the guy so many times. And even though they didn't come home with it a lot, like they dueled with Alabama for a little while and they lost to LSU. So
mm-hmm.
he's probably made it to like 4 or 5.
Yeah,
His resume speaks for himself, but yeah, there's question marks heading into it. And it's going to be looked at as probably the worst contract in college football if it doesn't produce, and Clemson has another year like that. But I think just based on what he's done, I could understand why it was warranted.
Two other coaches we saw get extended, specifically in the NFL sphere. We
Yeah.
saw both Sean McVay and their GM, who I can't think of his name off the top of my head. They were both extended through, I want to say, hold on. Let me see. But, I mean, I think we can both agree that one is,
That's a W
yeah, that's
for the
well earned.
Rams.
Okay. Rams extend Sean McVay and Les Snead through 2026. So
He brought Jared Goff to a Super Bowl.
yeah, I mean,
Enough said.
Jared Goff's an above-average quarterback, but still, you know.
No, but would you consider him like he's the guy to lead your team to
No.
a Super Bowl? I wouldn't
No.
think so.
No.
Sean McVay did.
Yeah. So, and then we also saw Cliff Kingsbury get extended, which is not so
I feel less good about.
straightforward. Yeah. A guy who is famous for his late season chokes.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about this extension?
So, I'll be completely honest. When the Cardinals first brought him, I was scratching my head.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, we're going with the air raid when I first saw it. But I looked into him. He had a sub 500 record in college. Did you know that? As a college coach, he was sub 500. Gets fired actually. He got fired and upgraded to the NFL. So I'm immediately like, the Cardinals see something I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And he comes in, he wants a new guy. He's done with Josh Rosen. He brings in Kyler Murray. It's a whole new culture. Arizona's going to start winning. You know, they're going to stop being this bottom feeder that they've been, you know, for a little while. They stop wasting what's left of Larry Fitzgerald. But it's the same thing that happened with Texas Tech, where they win 5 games straight and they lose out. And we just watched it on a bigger scale. We watched them go, what was it, 10-0?
Mm-hmm.
And they go 10-7 and lose the wild card game. And it's hard to justify that and then come off that season and be like, yeah, come back.
Yeah.
Because when a team collapses like that, it's not just like, oh, players were injured. Oh, this didn't go our way. It's the staff. There's something wrong in the Cardinals organization, and you got to think he's the central pillar. When heads start to roll, doesn't he have to be first? You know, for a winning culture to be developed. And so to see him be extended makes me feel like the Cardinals, for the rest of the time that they'll have weapons, they're going to be just like the team we just saw. You know, like 9-8, 10-7, 8-9. This is the Cardinals for a very long time. This clip could age like milk,
yeah.
But I'm just not a Cliff believer. I can't be anymore. Not after that.
So we also saw the new quarterback of the Denver Broncos, Russell Wilson, also sign a hefty extension. Yeah, Broncos country. Let's ride. And I think that one's pretty well deserved. I don't think there's a whole lot to dive into there. I don't know if he's got. I think he signed it for 4 or 5 years. I don't know if he's got that much elite football left in him. But, you know, we'll see. Aaron Rodgers just won back-to-back MVPs, and everybody thought he was done a couple years ago.
Even if it's not elite football, he could turn into a mentor because he's got it going on so well upstairs.
Yeah.
That, like, even if he had to mentor someone, it'd be okay. But like I said, like, what's Denver going to do if he's like, no, I don't want to stay in Denver? Yeah. It's like, well, just give him what he wants. He's like, I think he's pretty undisputedly top 5, or at least top 7. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good move, and it was what needed to be done.
With that being said, one more thing. One contract that is yet to be awarded and who has now set a deadline is Lamar Jackson, who has said this Saturday.
Liked a post of him in a Dolphins
That's it. I mean, hey, personally, I don't know how much he's asking for, but it's Lamar freaking Jackson, bro. This is
He
the
won an
face.
MVP.
Yeah, this is the face of your franchise right now.
Mhm.
If you don't sign him, I mean, I don't even know who do you even have as backup quarterback now. Trace McSorley? No, he's gone.
No, he's gone.
I don't even know who you have, bro. RG3, who's now working in the booth. I don't freaking know. Anyway,
There's
the point is that is the face of your franchise.
He's a
Pay the
must.
man.
He's
Yeah,
a
pay the
must.
man.
And you drafted him in the first round to replace Joe Flacco with the intention he was going to be this. He won an MVP. He's brought you to the playoffs a bunch of times. He's got a winning record. At a certain point, you just got to accept that he's the best quarterback you've had in a very long time. You just got to go for it.
Yeah.
And I expect the Ravens will, but if they don't, we'd see some more movement in the NFL. That would be interesting. More quarterbacks on the move. That would pretty much mark the end of free agency as we know it. It would start to become a lot like the NBA, where superstars just move all around.
And that is personally that's my nightmare.
It's tough for football. I'm not gonna lie. The culture is that you get attached to the guys, you buy their jerseys, you watch them every week, but then they're just gone, and that hurts.
With that being said, that is where we're going to wrap up today's episode. Thank you for making it this far. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all that. Thanks for checking us out. Next week, we'll react to week 2 of college football, the opening week of the NFL, some takes off of that, and, maybe we'll see some upsets, maybe not. So with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. And I hope you have a great day.
Take it easy.
Take it easy.